You are listening to How to Get Over Your Ex, episode number 153, How to Commit to Getting Over Your Ex. Welcome to How to Get Over Your Ex, a podcast on getting over your ex without it just taking time. I'm your host, breakup coach Dorothy. Let's turn your pain into power and your heartbreak into happy. All right, Bravehearts, for the month of August, we are featuring Braveheart alumni, individuals who have graduated from the Get Over Your Ex in 3 months or less program, who have fully embodied the more than move on mindset that we talked about in episode 151. These Bravehearts are going to not only share their wisdom and inspiration, but they will share with you tangible next steps from real life situations that they had during their journey to building a life their ex regrets leaving. All right? You are all invited to our free 2-day immersion event, August 24th and 25th, called More Than Move On, Build a Life Your Ex Regrets Leaving. I am so excited for you to join us. You can save your spot at www.breakupcoachdorothy.com/more than move on. All right. Without further ado, let's get to work. Here is our next special guest. Hello, my beautiful Bravehearts. How is everyone doing? I have a beautiful Braveheart here today, Cara, who is going to talk to us all about commitment. I think commitment is obviously, I actually know that commitment is a huge part of getting over your ex. And especially, and more importantly, building a life that's bigger and better than the one that you had with your ex. In the very beginning of my breakup, I didn't realize that this happened, but I was very committed and determined to creating a life that was better than the one that I had with my ex. Cara has committed to getting over her ex and really went all in on the Get Over Your Ex program. And so I wanted to bring her on to share her beautiful journey of that experience and what that looked like for her, but also really to give you some pointers around commitment. How do you become committed to something? How do you actually commit to something? Because I've noticed this, even though it was like a natural thing for me in terms of getting over my ex, I have worked on commitment to a lot of other goals. So I think this conversation is going to be really great, really awesome. Thank you so much, Cara, for coming on. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Okay. So let's go ahead, dive in. Cara, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? What do you do? Share us the story of like your breakup experience, what led you to the podcast, and then ultimately the Get Over Your Ex program, if that's how it worked for you. But tell us all about you.
Sure. I am 46 years old. I'm from Central Jersey, New Jersey, and I was a pharmacist. I'm a pharmacist by training, but I work for a pharmaceutical company now doing medical publications. And I am a mom of 2 teenage boys. They're 15 and 18. My son's graduating from high school this week. And I was married for 12 years, and I've been divorced for 6 years now. And we divorced, amicably, and we co-parent very well. And I started dating a few years ago after my divorce, and I was in a relationship for 2 years. And then that ended about 7 months ago. So basically that was my breakup story. That's why I was in the Get Over Your Ex program. But basically he broke up with me and I was devastated. When I was married, I wasn't like really in love. It was more like a business relationship. And so with this man that I was dating for 2 years, it was like, I was in love with him and everything was so great. I felt, so happy. It was so good to me. And I remember thinking one day, like, I can't believe I finally found like this man who loves me and I love him. And like, we feel the same way about each other. And then that had never happened before. It was either like one-sided or one way or the other. And so we got along great and I thought everything was good. And then, both had the same type of lifestyle, divorced, had kids, both had our own lives. We lived, separate houses and everything, but we took every opportunity to see each other. And then one day he just was like, I need a break. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, I don't understand. This is, everything seems great. I did not understand. There was leading up to that, we had gone on this trip to Florida. We had been planning it all summer. We were both excited to finally like go, go away together and spend some time together because our lives are so busy. And then like we got on the plane and like he just felt distant. I'm like, this is weird. I'm like, okay. We get back from the trip and he was just acting like very distant. And then he started like blowing me off and telling me he couldn't see me. And then I confronted him like on the phone one day when we were talking. And he, then he was like, I need a break. And I'm like, okay, well, I didn't realize like a week ago you're, telling me how much, you love me. And now it didn't make sense to me. So that was like my biggest pain point from the breakup basically was that it didn't make sense. I had so many unanswered questions. The fact that I had to like ask him instead of him having a conversation with me, that caused a lot of like anger and resentment and him like blowing me off for a week. And I had to confront him over the phone. I did make him have a conversation with me in person though. So I was like, you owe me a face-to-face conversation. And then when we met face-to-face, it was still the same, I didn't really get any answers. So then at the end of this, really like no answers. I thought everything was great. And I missed him. And, I was crying all the time. Like I really missed him. Like I really wanted him in my life. But I knew like I have a good life. I have a good job. I have 2 kids. I have my kids. I have my own house. Like I wasn't attached to him per se, but like I really wanted him in my life. I don't know. It's weird. Like I had a very strong desire, but not so much an attachment to like he's the only one who would, be able to fill this role in my life. But still, it was still like really, really very hard. So what my thought was is that I started looking for podcasts to get over him. And also like, I'm 46 years old and I want to find somebody to spend my life with. And I'm like, I still 46 years old. I haven't been able to find someone who basically is committed to stay with me for my life. So I'm looking for podcasts of like living your best life at my age. And I came across Brooke Castillo, and you were on one of her episodes, and I heard everything that you said to her. And I'm like, I need to listen to her podcast. So then I started listening to your podcast, and like everything that that you said, it was just like, I'm all in. Like this makes so much sense, because I want to I want to live a life that's bigger and better than anything that I had with him. And I don't need him to be in my life, but I need to find some way to like get over him. So that's basically what led me to the Get Over Your Ex program. And yeah.
I love that. I love the fact that you mentioned desire and attachment. You're like, I didn't necessarily feel attached to him for the future because you have your foundation set up, right? Like you're like, I own my home, I have beautiful children, but you were attached to him specifically being in your life. And then you had the strong desire. So when you got into the program, and this is like just an out of left field question based off of what you said there that I was like very curious about. Do you remember what was kind of like the epiphany or aha moment that reduced your desire for him?
All right. So my desire was, like I thought he was like, he's so good to me. He's so, my biggest thought of like, he was so handsome and manly. And like, I loved that about him. So I'm like, the biggest aha moment was like, well, changed my thinking to, that he is actually not the only person out there who is manly and handsome and sexy and, someone who will treat me good. So then I just practiced that new belief, and that actually, I just started believing that.
Well, yeah.
And I attracted him. So then someone else in my life, I could attract someone else just like him.
Yes. And once you start practicing a belief, you guys, you start finding evidence for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure like once you started looking at that and questioning like, oh, is he the only one that looks that attractive and is that amazing? Probably not. And then you start finding all these other attractive, amazing men.
Yes.
And then, like you said, because I was able to attract him in the first place, who's to say I wouldn't be able to attract him again or someone better, right? Like
Yep.
when I say again, I mean someone just like him or better.
Yep.
And you guys, every time we do something twice, we normally get faster and better the second time through. Right?
Very true.
Okay. So another thing that you mentioned as one of your big pain points that you were struggling with that I think a lot of people are going to resonate with is this whole unanswered question bullshit. Like just didn't give you a reason, was really kind of like beating around the bush, wouldn't give you a straightforward like answer to your questions, I'm assuming. So tell us a little bit more about that and how you resolved that.
Yeah, so I had all these questions, and it's funny because he even told me, he's like, "What had nothing to do with you? It's not you, it's me." And he's like, "That's just the way I am." He's like, "You're great," and of course I don't. I'm like, "Well, if I'm great, then why don't you want to be with me anymore?" Right? It's got to be me. So I think that's just like seeing that. So having to change and re-answering those questions, like understanding why I was still thinking that it was me. And then, answering those questions like, well, then what was it? What really helped me was answering my own questions in a way that served me. That was like probably the best thing that, or the thing that really got me over him. Is just understanding like things from his perspective, and, answering those questions myself in a way that served me, that made me feel better.
Right? Isn't
Mm-hmm.
it crazy? I feel like, okay, so I'm very curious. So
Mm-hmm.
before you answer, the way the program works, you guys, is there's four main pillars, and the order of the pillars is really important. And so, well, I think they're really important. So I want to get your opinion, because pillar 2 is all about building that relationship with yourself, building that confidence, seeing your worth, like all of that. And then pillar 3 is really about creating closure around the situation so that you can rewrite your breakup story. And so when you're saying answering those questions for myself, that's all done in pillar 3. And rewriting the breakup story, looking at his point of view, is also in pillar 3. Do you feel like you could have done those things without having addressed the relationship that you have with yourself first?
No, definitely not. And you just reminded me of something. You have to build a relationship with yourself first. I don't specifically remember what, but I do remember that I had to definitely go through the feelings first, because I remember I was crying. I was crying all the time and thinking, I don't want to be crying anymore. And I was like resisting it. And then finally I was able to, like, I remember you had coached me on that, is, just why do you think you can't be crying 4 times a day? And so just, lean into that. So I did that, and then it actually reduced the amount of times that I would cry a day eventually, when I would just let myself do it. But yeah, definitely building a relationship with myself is important, because I wouldn't have been able to get to that point where you could answer the questions.
Right? Because I feel like I get like a lot of DMs, or like people who aren't in the program reach out to me being like, when I've talked about closure before, maybe they've seen some sort of material that I've talked about closure before. And they're like, how do I just answer my own questions? Like I answer them, but they feel like lies. And I think that that's because we haven't really addressed the relationship that you have with yourself. And once you build that relationship with yourself and learn how to listen to your inner voice and like get really confident in your own answers for things and recognize that you're choosing them, it's really hard to like do that next step. So,
Yeah.
but I also am glad that you brought up feel your feelings, because that was the first module. That's the first pillar. And so that's like the first thing you have to tackle. And I think there's two things that I'm thinking of with that is, number one, by the time you guys get to me, you're so sick of feeling your feelings and you're like, no, Door, I've really felt my feelings. We don't need to do this anymore. And I'm like,
Right.
no, I need you to feel worse before you can feel better. And you haven't done it in the way that I do it with my clients. Like I promise you, even if you've been to one of my 5-day trainings or anything like that, you still haven't done it thoroughly enough in the way that I teach it. I mean, that's my opinion. Was that kind of your experience, or was your experience
Yeah.
different?
Yeah, no, it was, because I listened to it on the podcast, and then I did it in the 5-day training. And then I was still like, there's still got to be more to this, because it's not really working. Like, at
Yeah.
least I couldn't do it myself. Maybe,
Well,
some people probably can.
right, exactly. And I think too with the 5-day like it's a beautiful tool. Oh my God, I love the 5-day training. You can accomplish so much in it.
Hmm.
However, it's in 5 days. It's the difference between doing this work for 5 days, feeling your feelings one day out of the 5 days, versus feeling your feelings for 4 weeks out of the 3 months that we're together. It's like a completely different cathartic experience, I think. But
Yeah, I would definitely agree.
okay. So talk to me. Are there any other main pain points that you felt like you wanted to overcome in the program?
Yeah, no, I think that just missing him, so much, and I would just have like those recurring thoughts all the time, they're just like, they would come back. It took me a good part of the three months to get over it. So I thought that like, this really isn't going to work. But it really was those recurring thoughts. Like, I missed him so much. So I had to like train my thought patterns around that. And
Talk to
just,
us more about this. Like, we really need to go into this because
yeah,
you're not the only one that struggles with, like, oh my God, I miss my ex.
yeah.
But like, what was the solution to that? Like, when you're sitting there thinking, and you say, like, retrain your thoughts, and like, that's amazing, that's good. But like, what did you retrain your thoughts to? Or like, where did you get to? Where was your kind of like conclusion or aha that helped you reduce the amount of time you're missing your ex?
So when I would think, oh, I'm missing him, I would sit, something would remind me of him, and then I would miss him. And I just had to, think like, okay, well, my biggest thought that I would say every time I would think of him was like, well, of course you miss him because you were spent 2 years with him, and he misses you too. Like, I'm sure he misses you too, and it's okay, but it's not a problem.
Yes.
It's
Isn't
not
that
a problem.
crazy? I think half the battle is recognizing the stuff that's coming up in your breakup is actually not a problem, and you're deciding to make it an issue as if you're not supposed to. There's so many manuals that we have for ourselves as humans living on this planet, thinking that we should or we shouldn't be thinking or feeling the way that we're thinking or feeling.
Yeah.
And I think half of the problems we have in life are just shoulding on ourselves, saying that we should or we should not be feeling this way, or we're saying it's a problem when in reality, it might not even be an issue. And then when we make it a problem, we think that we're addressing it and getting closer to the solution, when in reality, you're just perpetuating the problem. And so the moment you tell yourself, like, oh, of course I miss my ex, it's only been 4 to 7 months since my breakup. And I spent however many years with this person. And every time I see this, it was new to me before I met him. And I saw, like, so now when I see it, I think of him, like, of course. Just
Hmm.
like I'm out on the boat and I will think of my ex because he's the first person that I went out into like the ocean with on a consistent basis. But I'm not like, oh my God, this is miserable. I had this thought about my ex. So I'm on this boat with my fiance. Like, this is not a good thing. Like this, that. But it doesn't have to turn into this huge spiral. And I think half the battle when we're talking about missing our ex is it starts with just one thought of thinking about your ex,
Hmm.
and then we spiral out and we start to think, oh my God, I miss this person, when in reality, like, oh, maybe we're just missing the experience, maybe we're just missing the memory that we had, maybe we were missing the potential of that person. And what if that's okay? Right?
Yeah.
So good. I'm glad that
Yeah.
you brought that up.
Yeah, I definitely see that now. I'm, able to get to that point, which is great. That's
No,
exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to get to
yeah.
that point where I'm just like, it's okay. Like, I think of them and like, yeah, that was a great memory, and that's it.
Yeah. And you don't make it mean all these things that
Yeah,
then spiral you out of control.
yeah.
Ah, so good.
Also, like, another like aha moment that I had when I realized, like, because when I said, he even told me it wasn't about me, and then I was thinking, well, of course it's about me, and I always thought that was like the thought in my head. Like I said, when I'm 46 years old, I still haven't found somebody to like settle down with, or that wants to stay with me. It's always, that I what, so then I'm thinking like, I'm not good enough, I wasn't fun enough, I still made it, all about me. And when I realized, like, when I was able to change, the thoughts around that was like you said, that the biggest turning point for me.
Oh, so good. How did you get there? How did you get to, like, I guess, where did you even get to with it? Okay. So it went from, I was thinking it's about me. It has to be about me. It's like fact that it's about me. How could it not be? Right. To, oh, it has everything to do with him and nothing to do with me. Do you know exactly when that happened and like what happened that helped you make that shift?
Yeah. So I just started thinking about what I needed to think and feel about what he did. So from his perspective, what he was thinking and what he was feeling, and then feeling, like, okay, well, he was having something going on in his life. He had stuff going on. He still like had just been recently divorced. He had things going on with, his family, and he had to do what's best for him. And so then that made me feel like compassionate for him. And then feeling compassionate for him made me stop thinking that it was about me, that it was really about him.
Yes, right. And when we can have compassion and really look at it from the other person's point of view, and we don't do this until like, again, pillar three, which is like after halfway in the program,
Mhm.
we don't start looking at because it's so hard to look at his point of view and you're still feeling feelings. There's like no way. And again, you can't do that before you build the relationship with yourself. And so looking at your ex's point of view and like what he might have been thinking and feeling to show up in the breakup the way that he did is one of like the best things that you could do for yourself. And it's a really pivotal moment when you're rewriting your breakup story because it really helps you see their point of view. And when you see their point of view, you can so easily see that it has nothing to do with you. I have like this entire, I don't know if you remember this, but I try to like, I draw these stick figures out trying to like demonstrate this with the model. And it's absolutely like hilarious because I just can't draw. But he has thoughts. He's thinking thoughts that then make him feel a certain way. So if we really like take a step back here and think about like just a general scenario, it's like maybe he's thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know what I want for my life. Like maybe I don't want to settle down. Maybe I don't want to do these things. I don't know. I can't figure it out. So he's feeling confused, nervous, and scared again, because his thoughts, not about his circumstance, which is you. Right. And then his action is to then break up and say it's all about me and not about you and not give you any real answers because he doesn't have any real answers. He doesn't have the answers to give you. So, like, and then that's also probably why any answer he did give you didn't feel satisfactory because he doesn't even know. And so when we can see that, it's like, oh my gosh, just like a big sigh of relief. It's not about me.
Yeah, it's life changing to understand and realize that.
And when you realize that too, with just one person, like your ex who was so significant in your life, it's so much easier to not take on other people's opinions, like your boss or the Starbucks barista or anyone else, friends, family, right? I love that. Okay. So we need to I want to tie this all in with the main component that we talked about earlier on this call around commitment, because I don't think you would have gotten to where you are now without the commitment component
Mhm.
because you've got to be committed going into this process. There's like a lot of work that you work through. So, talk to us about this because you mentioned. So, for those of you who don't know this yet, inside of the Get Over Your Ex program, you have 3 check-ins. You have a check-in in the very beginning to just kind of build awareness and figure out where you are and where's your desire, what are your goals for the program, getting really clear about where you are now so that it makes it very clear about where you're going and make sure that you've accomplished everything you wanted to by the end of the program. And then a midpoint review just to check in with where you're at. But in your final review, Cara, you had mentioned that you talked about committed. So you said committed to getting over your ex. And you were very committed and you were going to make that happen. So tell us more about what that meant to you. And I really want to know like the how to steps. Like, how did you
Mhm.
commit to that? And what did the commitment look like on like a daily basis?
When I decided to join, I wanted this more than, I wanted to do the work to make sure that it was, at the end of the 3 months that I was feeling like I'm living my best life, the bigger life, better life than with him. And, that I'm to the point where I didn't want to think about him all day long and cry every time I think about him and miss him all the time. And just want to get to the point where I just said, like, my thing was I wanted to get to the point where I was, if I had a memory of him, like I said, it's just a memory and it's okay, and just move on and live my life. So, I decided you did talk about, like, I remember decide, commit, and practice. So, like, I loved that part because so when I went to, when I knew I wanted to get over my ex, I would write down on sticky notes, like by my computer, I had a sticky note that says, well, I couldn't start with the I am over him. So I started with like, I can get over him. And then I scratched it out at one point and put I am over him. So I would look at it every day when I sat down to work. I put like reminders on my phone so that it would pop up every day. And I had a couple of reminders, about my, my new belief. But one was like, I am, getting over him. And then soon it was like, I am over him. And when I saw that, I would be like, yep, I am over him. And then I would think about how I would feel when I was over him. And so that I would like feel that every day. So basically like the sticky notes, the things on my computer, like notes, different places. I mean, the reminder on my phone, just things to remind me every day to actually do it. And then like take that minute, whatever it was, to like think about it and do it. So that's basically how I committed, and it was very helpful. In fact, it was just the other day that I'm like, I can delete this off my phone now. I don't need it.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. So good. Yeah, commitment is huge, you guys. And so, I guess, what would you tell someone who's struggling to commit to getting over their ex? Like, what might you tell them based off of your experience?
Yeah, I guess committing to get over them, I guess, is a little bit right scary because you're thinking like maybe I'm not going to love him anymore, never see him. I don't know, whatever it is, right? And it seems scary because you're like, well, I'm not going to be able to do it too. Like that's the other part. I think that is, if you commit to it, you might, what if I fail or what if I don't do it? So it's little, I think, a little scary when you commit to something, but I think it's definitely something that you have to do. You have to do, and remind yourself about it because it's definitely possible. It's definitely possible and probable that you will do it and it works.
I love that. And I think the beauty of commitment, you guys, is that being committed to something simply means that you don't give up. So your only job is once you're committed, it's a done deal. There's no way you're not going to get over your ex as long as you've committed. Because when you're committed, you go after that thing until it's accomplished, until it's done. Right. And so even when you think about big picture from my breakup, it's like I was committed to building a life that's bigger and better than the one that I had with my ex. And I'm still doing it. I'm still creating it every single day to this day. That's how committed I am. And it's even here and I'm committed to like maintaining it here. Right. And so I think going to this place of like, it's already done. If I've committed, it's already done. So I just have to keep showing up for myself. And that's the practice part, right? Practicing doing this work day in and day out until I've created the outcome that I wanted, which is exactly what you did.
Yes. And I remember even, not even that long ago when right before I would say like I was over him, like you would fail and then you would just do it. You would just like, okay, it didn't work today, but tomorrow I'm still committed to it.
Yes, that's such an important piece.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. This is not linear. People say this all the time. It's so cliche and I hate saying it because it is so cliche, but like the healing is not linear. You will go through moments where you quote unquote fail or like maybe you run into your ex, and we have a whole process inside of the program to help you through situations like that and pick yourself back up and get back on board. But that is going to be a part of the process that there's no way you can like get around that. You're going to have moments where you think you failed, but as long as you're committed, it doesn't really matter. And you're always constantly failing forward. And there's no way you're starting from scratch. You're starting over again. It's simply, oh, here's an obstacle and I'm committed to finding the strategy to overcome it, period.
Yep.
So good. I love it. Awesome. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the brave hearts listening? Any tips, any words of wisdom, anything that you can think of that we haven't covered?
Yeah, I think I mentioned one of my favorite things was now that is thinking that something is possible. I remember the impossibility workshop. I think was one of my favorite things as well.
It's my favorite.
Yeah,
I have to
it was cool.
pause because it's legit my favorite thing. I'm like, can I make an entire program out of this? Like, I want to create like impossible things with people. That is literally my favorite. So that's so cool to hear you say that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think I using it more like after I'm breaking, after the breakup to move on, like to find a new partner, like because I'm thinking myself like it's not possible. It hasn't been possible up until this point. So how can it, so that using those tools from that workshop has definitely helped me like afterwards and seeing that you can you can do what you think is impossible. And I definitely think like it's just really amazing how you can change your beliefs by just like changing your thinking, just on every aspect of the program. Yeah, it's just, to me, was life changing. And I got coached a couple of times in the group program, but listening to a lot of that was like, so many people have like the same feelings and issues that you're having. So it's just like, even, just listening to that was amazing. I think that everybody maybe doesn't realize that like there's so many people that going through it, and it's really like, it seems impossible. In the beginning, I didn't think it was going to. I'm like I said, it took me like almost 3 months. I'm like, I really just don't think this is gonna, I don't know if this is gonna work. I really don't know if I feel better, but I don't know if it's gonna completely work, because it's almost 3 months, and I'm like, I still feel a little bit, but then it did, and really helped a lot of people, and I think that's really awesome. So
It all happens in a moment. I
yeah,
mean, am I right? I say this, you guys.
totally.
It's
Yeah.
almost like you guys don't believe me sometimes. But this shit happens in a moment. You get over your ex in a moment, and then everything follows suit. It's almost like a snowball effect. It's like getting it going. You're like going up the hill, and then you get to the top of the hill, and that turning point happens, and then you start falling down the hill, and everything. I think like the coaching, I've heard people talk about quantum leaping lately. And I'm like, I feel like that's what that is. It's like once you have the click, you leap forward like exponentially. You're just, everything changes so quickly, so fast, in such a beautiful way once that click happens. Sometimes that click happens in a couple of weeks, and sometimes that click happens like right before the 3 months are done. And none of it's good, none of it's bad, none of it's right, none of it's wrong. It's all your own journey. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's the real stuff. There is sometimes it takes longer for people than others. And of course, you're going to do it within the 3 month time period, because that's my commitment to you. But that happens. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, I just think that if you do all of the things that you say to do, and in the program, even or take some of the tips that you have for doing this on your podcast or whatever people's situation, it's really very yeah, if you commit to doing it, I think it's definitely going to happen.
Commitment is the thing, guys. Be committed and you create the results that you want. I
Yep.
love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Cara. I really appreciate you coming on. I think this is going to be super useful for all the brave hearts. All the brave hearts are also saying thank you, and they appreciate you. I hope you have an amazing day, and thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes. If you're loving the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast, and you want to learn how to get over your ex and build a life bigger and better than the one you had with your ex, I would love to personally invite you to take this work deeper at breakupcoachdorothy.com/next steps.